For 20 years I've been in youth ministry, and I have been broken over how many kids we lose from the church after their high school graduation. And that's where Fusion was born out of, addressing the loss of kids from the faith by helping them to develop spiritual resilience in their walk with the Lord. I want to challenge you, moms and dads, to think of your kids like this river. They're going to run. But what are they going to run to? Pastors, for the time that you have leadership over this next generation, as you're discipling them, equipping them, what expectations are you laying on them as their spiritual father? Mission pastors, youth pastors. What's the goal? At the end of that mission trip, at the end of that week of youth camp, at the end, youth pastors, of that process, and they graduate from high school and they go on, what is it that you want them to do? More than that, who is it that you want them to become? Fusion defines that. Fusion refines that so that they can literally take who God has equipped them to be at 18 years old and to harden that metal, to develop that process in order to send them on their way so that when they're not just 20 or 30 or even 40, but 50, 60 years old, that they have passed on a heritage of faith to the next generation. I often get asked, when it comes to missions and ministry and what Fusion does, they say, Scott, it's more than just about missions. I mean, it's Fusion is missions, but so much more. And I say, you're right. It is more. It's about this idea of biblical adulthood. Biblical adulthood is essentially equipping a young man or a young lady to take their responsibility as a follower of Christ to become a reproducing member of the church, of the body. Talk about being able to make disciples that make disciples. But what does that really mean? It means that they have to have a full understanding that the Great Commission is not an end in itself. The Great Commission is what happens when we're living the greatest commandment, when they're learning to love the Lord their God with all their heart, their soul, and their strength, and to love their neighbor as themselves. That's what we're doing, is helping them understand that as a biblical adult, you are taking responsibility not just for yourself and your faith, but for those that God has placed around you as a steward, to equip them to be able to run so others may hear and live.